Exclusive report, a new Chinese heliport being constructed 20 kilometers east of the line of actual control near the sensitive Fishtails region of Arunachal Pradesh. I'll explain all of that. May give Chinese armed forces the ability to speedily move in military resources into an underdeveloped remote area along the frontier. While the heliport lies within Chinese territory that India does not dispute, its absence may be deeply problematic. I have this report. Well, the heliport, images of which you see here, lies along the banks of the Gongri-Babuku River in the Tibetan Autonomous Region. This is within Chinese territory that India does not dispute. Before we share more details, this is the area. Let's go to the next page that we're actually talking about. And this is actually east of the sensitive Fishtails region in Arunachal Pradesh. And what you see over here are Indian air bases in the region in Arunachal Pradesh, in Assam as well. And these are Chinese bases which they have in the region. And this is where the new Chinese heliport has been constructed. But let's move to another image of this, because this is all in that very, very sensitive Fishtail 2 region. Now, this is in the far east of Arunachal Pradesh on the frontier with China. You can see the position of the new heliport. You can see the Fishtail 2 region and the Fishtail 1 region. It's called Fishtail because it's distinctive in this region. This is close to where, just 20 kilometers across in their territory, the Chinese have constructed this particular facility. And you've got many more details over here. What we're looking at over here are the hangars. Now, 3 of these hangars have already been constructed. There is a 4th which is being constructed over here. And there'll be 3 further hangars which are being constructed in this particular area. The air traffic control is going to be set up over here as well. We've got the apron area, and it is on this apron area in the bottom that you're going to have helicopters which are actually positioned. Let's go to the next image, which actually shows you the runway. So this is just south of what I was showing you. You've got 2 parallel taxiways over here. You've got this 600-meter runway, which is in the process of being constructed. This actually enables rolling takeoffs by helicopters in mountainous areas such as this. Helicopters sometimes roll for a takeoff because power available to them is actually lower. The next image actually shows you all of this. Now, right on top, the blue structures over there are the work sheds where work on this is actually taking place. It's just been in the last 9 months that all of this has taken place. The Chinese constructing at a very, very fast pace. The hangars that I told you about, the runway below it, and of course, this is 20 kilometers from the line of actual control. Again, this is an area that India doesn't dispute. But let's bring you a few more details on why this is significant. Now, this is significant because over a period of time, the Chinese have been salami slicing into territory all across the frontier. They've been threatening the frontier in many senses. And while this is in an undisputed area, India needs to deal with the Chinese infrastructure build up on our sides. How exactly is India doing that? We are doing it through the Vibrant Villages Development Project. So if we move to this, this is announced by Amit Shah. It's the Vibrant Villages project, which targets 3,000 villages, not just in Arunachal Pradesh, but 4 states across the northeast of the country. 4,800 crore rupees has been allotted for the first phase of this project. And also separately, there is a 2,400 kilometer trans-Arunachal highway that is being completed that drastically reduces travel time, particularly in parts of eastern Arunachal Pradesh. But let's just go back one more time to the image that we are talking about. This has already been constructed. It represents a formidable infrastructure build-up in an area which has typically been underdeveloped. I'm talking once again about that Fishtails region on the very east of Arunachal Pradesh. How will India counter this? That needs to be seen. Well, joining us now, Brahma Chalani, the Strategic Affairs expert, and Major General Sanjay Meston. Thank you both very much for being with us. Dr. Chalani, you've seen the report. What are the implications for India?
Well, this is just one example of how China is systematically changing the military landscape right across the Himalayas by building new infrastructure, new underground warfare facilities. The question is that in the run-up to next month's BRICS summit in Kazan, Russia, India and China have stepped up efforts to reach a deal to defuse the standoff, which is now in its 5th year. Now, even if a deal is reached to defuse a standoff, the changed military realities, the realities that China has changed on the ground, those realities will not change. So the question that arises is, what can such a deal achieve in real terms other than by diffusing some tensions?
General Meston, 20 kilometers east of the Fishtails region. The Fishtails region, as I understand it, is part of Arunachal Pradesh, which has been underdeveloped in the past. Infrastructure has been very, very problematic. That being the case, if the Chinese have moved over here, it's not a small facility. It's hardly a helipad. You know, it's much more substantial than that. What does it mean?
Vishnu, good evening. Whatever Chinese activity is here across, I think it means lot. If I put it in the strategic context, I think Chinese aim is very, very clear that they want to keep the border issue alive. And this is a big message for India. And there are certain reasons. We have our own apprehensions, but besides this, if I put across the Chinese apprehensions, India's proximity to Southeast Asia, that is one. Secondly, are being part of the Quad. So all these aspects at the strategic level and the vulnerability, biggest vulnerability for the Chinese is in the Chumbi Valley, the brigade which I commanded in Nathula. So seeing all these realities, China is very clear that they want the border issue to remain alive so that they can keep doing pinpricks at India at their choice and time of choosing. The way Pakistan is doing a proxy war, Pakistan's strategy is they will not like to go in for a war, but they will have these limited kind of skirmishes along the Indian border so that to keep the Indian army tied up and also, give us some kind of embarrassment. This is the intent. So implications are very, very clear. And all along, they have got the border villages coming up, I think about 623 along the entire Indo border, the China border. And all these villages are state of the art. They are having 5G connectivity, good roads, transport, communication, rail network. So the intent is that they are going to be the first line of defense. When I was commanding my brigade, I realized the Chinese used to come from the hinterland and they used to come rarely, once in a month, to just see the watershed. But today, this is indirectly, this is their first line of defense. And I would also say, Vishnu, that the Chinese 50% combat potential is now going to be having a forward kind of a deployment. That means they, earlier when I was serving in the army, I recollect we used to talk about that the Chinese can bring 50 to 60 divisions from the hinterland. But the biggest indication to us was when they crossed Sangpur River. And therefore, we could know that they are coming here for some business. But today, with the kind of villages coming up and the infrastructure development, 50% of Chinese combat potential, I personally feel is readily available for Chinese for any kind of threat scenario or these kind of local conflict situations.
General Minister, you know, we use helicopters extensively for inter-valley travel, particularly in that area. What the Chinese appear to be doing over here is to try and replicate that model by creating this heliport at a place which is about less than 6,000 feet in altitude. So compared to other areas, which is very high altitude over there, this is at a lower altitude that facilitates the movement and the positioning of helicopters. How important are helicopters in that geography?
Yeah, Vishnu, helicopters are extremely essential in this kind of terrain, whether it is high altitude or whether it is a low altitude, the area which we are talking about. And helicopters, they assist in a number of ways. For us, especially the trans-valley movement is extremely essential. And I have myself seen the troops can be reinforced, brought to any contingency position very, very quickly. Now, in case of China, the advantage is that, considering that this area is a, differing perception area, this area, as it is sensitive to us, therefore China can now start deploying helicopters, UAVs, drones, etc. And therefore now their, ability for the ISR, basically surveillance, etc., deep into our territory would be quite easier. Sure. That is one thing. Secondly, for logistics build-up, this is again going to be important. And let's assume tomorrow they have to do some local skirmish along the LFC. And it's not only here, large number of areas now they are having the helipads coming up or these heliports. So I presume that this is for quick reaction, for ISR activities, for logistics, for evacuation of casualties, because the terrain over there is difficult.
Sure.
But in Tar, the terrain is comparatively easier. So therefore, their road infrastructure, their rail network, which is coming into the depth area, this gives them an added advantage.
All
But
right,
I
General
think
Meston, thanks so much for explaining that to us. A very significant development. We've reached out to the Army with these images before we published it, and the Indian Air Force as well. No comments from the Indian Air Force. I have spoken to some sources in the military who've explained, the significance of this and how they're very concerned.